By 2026, losing your home may not start with missed rent or eviction court. It could begin with a data check, a policy shift, or a rule you never knew changed. Millions of renters across the UK are being pushed closer to homelessness, not by choice, but by systems tightening quietly in the background. Families, workers, students, and long-term residents are all exposed. Housing security is no longer just about paying rent. It is about compliance, timing, and paperwork. The real danger is how fast stability can disappear once the process starts without warning or safety nets in place. Number 1. Stricter right to rent checks. Stricter right to rent checks are expected to significantly increase housing insecurity across the UK by 2026. Landlords are legally required to verify a tenant's immigration status before granting or renewing a tenancy. New rules expand these checks, increase penalties, and reduce tolerance for uncertainty. As a result, landlords are becoming more cautious, often refusing applicants who appear complex, unfamiliar, or slow to verify. This disproportionately affects migrants, students, low-income workers, and even British citizens without passports or up-to-date documents. Digital verification systems are also changing how checks are carried out. Landlords now rely on online portals, time-limited share codes, and real-time home office responses. Errors, delays, or system outages can halt applications instantly. When verification fails or takes too long, landlords may choose the fastest option rather than the fairest one. This creates silent exclusion, where people are denied housing without formal rejection. Renewals are equally risky, as failed rechecks can trigger immediate notices to leave. Reducing risk requires preparation and documentation. Tenants should keep clear records of identification, visa status, and correspondence. Applying for renewals early helps avoid gaps that raise red flags. Asking landlords how checks are conducted can reveal timelines and expectations. Seeking advice when problems arise may prevent eviction before it begins. Right-to-rent rules shift responsibility onto tenants to prove eligibility constantly. Under stricter enforcement, housing security depends less on rental history and more on administrative precision, making everyday paperwork a deciding factor in whether someone keeps a roof over their head. This pressure reshapes housing access nationwide and increases homelessness risk for groups already living close to instability everywhere today. Number 2. Faster evictions under reformed procedures. Faster eviction procedures are expected to reshape housing security across the UK as new reforms take effect. Updated processes aim to reduce court delays, streamline possession claims, and limit tenant defenses. While presented as efficiency measures, the real impact is speed. Tenants may receive less notice, shorter response windows, and fewer opportunities to resolve disputes. For households already managing rising rents and unstable incomes, accelerated timelines increase the risk of sudden displacement without adequate preparation. One critical change involves reduced flexibility once arrears or breaches are recorded. Automated case management and standardized notices mean landlords can progress cases with minimal interaction. Informal arrangements, such as repayment plans or temporary agreements, are less likely to pause proceedings. Tenants who miss deadlines, misunderstand notices, or lack legal support may lose their homes before fully understanding their rights. This especially affects renters with language barriers, disabilities, or limited access to advice services. Protecting housing stability now requires early action and awareness. Tenants should open and respond to all notices immediately, even if they seem routine. Keeping records of payments, repairs, and communication can help challenge claims quickly. Seeking advice as soon as problems arise is increasingly important as waiting reduces options. Reformed eviction procedures favor speed over flexibility, shifting power toward process rather than context. As timelines shrink, housing security depends on responsiveness, documentation, and understanding rights before pressure escalates. These changes place vulnerable renters at higher risk, making preparation essential for anyone relying on private rented housing under tightening enforcement frameworks nationwide. Local authorities and charities warn these reforms could increase emergency housing demand and overwhelm support systems already under severe strain nationwide today significantly. Number 3. Benefit sanctions and housing instability. Benefit sanctions are becoming a major driver of housing instability as welfare rules tighten across the UK. Sanctions reduce or stop payments when claimants miss appointments, submit late paperwork, or fail to meet job search requirements. Even short suspensions can disrupt rent payments, especially for households with no savings. Landlords rarely wait for benefits to restart, and arrears can build within weeks. For many renters, one sanction is enough to trigger notices, debt, and the risk of homelessness. Automation has increased how quickly sanctions are applied. Digital systems flag missed actions instantly, often without considering personal circumstances. Illness, caring duties, technical issues, or misunderstanding online requirements can all result in penalties. Appeals take time, but rent deadlines do not pause. During this gap, tenants may face pressure, warnings, or eviction steps. This gap between welfare systems and housing realities places claimants in an impossible position where compliance errors translate directly into housing loss. Reducing risk requires proactive management of benefit claims. Keeping records of appointments, messages, and submissions helps challenge sanctions early. Communicating with landlords at the first sign of payment issues may delay action. Seeking advice from welfare support services can prevent small errors from escalating. Benefit sanctions are designed to enforce behavior, but their impact extends far beyond income. They destabilize housing first, creating knock-on effects for health, employment, and family life. Under stricter rules, maintaining benefits becomes central to keeping a home, turning administrative compliance into a critical housing survival skill. This pressure disproportionately affects young people, disabled claimants, single parents, and low-income workers, who face higher monitoring, fewer buffers, and faster consequences during enforcement cycles nationwide annually. Number 4. Local Council Homelessness Threshold Changes. Local Council homelessness threshold changes are expected to leave more people without support as housing pressure intensifies. Councils assess who qualifies for assistance using priority need tests, local connection rules, and vulnerability assessments. New guidance narrows these definitions, meaning fewer applicants meet the criteria for emergency housing. Single adults, people in shared housing, and those without dependents are increasingly told they are not eligible, even when they have nowhere safe to stay. Resource shortages drive many of these decisions. Councils face limited budgets, staff shortages, and rising demand, pushing them to ration help more strictly. Applicants may be redirected to private rentals they cannot afford or placed on long waiting lists without interim accommodation. Missed appointments, incomplete forms, or slight inconsistencies can lead to refusals. Once rejected, reapplying becomes harder, as previous decisions are referenced during future assessments, reducing flexibility further. Reducing risk requires understanding how councils make decisions and preparing evidence early. Keeping records of health issues, unsafe living conditions, and previous eviction notices strengthens applications. Attending all appointments and responding promptly to requests improves outcomes. Seeking advice before presenting as homeless can help frame cases correctly. Threshold changes mean councils focus on eligibility first, not urgency. For many people, this shifts homelessness from a temporary crisis to a prolonged condition. Without preparation, individuals may cycle between unsafe arrangements, sofa surfing, or rough sleeping, while technically deemed ineligible for help under tightened rules affecting housing security nationwide during colder months. Cost of living pressures and growing rental shortages across urban and rural communities alike. This reality leaves many people invisible to systems designed to protect them during emergencies across the country today. Number 5. Immigration status linked to housing access. Immigration status is increasingly being linked directly to housing access, creating immediate risk for many renters. Data sharing between the Home Office, landlords, and local authorities allows housing decisions to be influenced by visa status in real time. When an application is refused, delayed, or under review, housing security can be affected instantly. Tenants may face non-renewal, refusal of new tenancies, or sudden notices to leave before appeal rights are exercised. This linkage removes the buffer that once existed between immigration and housing systems. A pending decision no longer means stability. Landlords, fearing penalties, may act quickly to avoid risk, even when a tenant has lived there for years. Digital checks do not account for complexity, ongoing cases, or legal nuance. As a result, people can lose housing while still lawfully present. Families, workers, and students often discover this only after being asked to leave. Reducing risk requires understanding how housing and immigration now interact. Keeping proof of pending applications, appeal submissions, and legal correspondence is essential. Informing landlords early, in writing, may prevent abrupt action. Seeking advice when status changes occur helps identify protections quickly. Housing tied to immigration status turns administrative delays into housing emergencies. Under expanding enforcement, stability depends on documentation, timing, and awareness rather than fairness. These rules quietly push people into homelessness not through eviction courts, but through compliance systems operating in the background, reshaping access to housing across the country, affecting neighborhoods, workplaces, schools, and community stability at scale, especially during enforcement surges and policy transitions nationwide, impacting vulnerable households most severely disproportionately, without safety nets or warning signs appearing suddenly everywhere today, now nationally. Number 6. Short-term tenancy normalization. Short-term tenancy normalization is changing how long people can rely on a single home. More landlords are offering 6 or 12-month contracts instead of longer agreements. While this appears flexible, it removes long-term security for renters. Families, low-income workers, and people with children face constant uncertainty about renewals. Planning schools, jobs, or healthcare becomes harder when housing may end every year. Frequent renewals also allow rent increases or non-renewal without explanation, pushing tenants into repeated moves and higher costs across cities and towns nationwide today for many households. Shorter tenancies shift power toward landlords and reduce tenant leverage. When contracts end quickly, renters hesitate to report repairs or challenge unfair treatment. Fear of non-renewal keeps people silent. Frequent reapplications also require deposits, references, and upfront fees, draining savings. Those already stretched by rising living costs fall behind faster. Temporary housing becomes the norm, increasing stress, disrupting routines, and weakening community ties that help people stay stable during difficult periods, especially for families with children and older renters who need predictability to plan their lives safely over time in changing markets. Reducing risk means adapting to a housing system built on short cycles. Tenants should track contract dates, save renewal correspondence, and budget for sudden moves. Building emergency savings, checking notice clauses, and understanding renewal rights can buy time. Asking landlords early about intentions provides clarity. Short-term tenancy normalization does not cause homelessness alone, but it removes stability. When combined with rising rents and enforcement pressure, frequent contract endings push households closer to crisis, leaving fewer buffers when unexpected costs or delays strike suddenly without support systems ready for vulnerable renters in transition periods. Number 7. Rent arrears reporting automation. Rent arrears reporting automation is changing how quickly housing problems escalate. New systems allow landlords and agents to report missed payments almost instantly. Automated alerts trigger reminders, warnings, and formal steps without personal discussion. Where tenants once had time to explain delays, software now moves cases forward automatically. A single late payment can generate records shared across platforms, increasing pressure before tenants understand what is happening or how to respond. This automation removes flexibility from housing relationships. Systems do not account for illness, benefit delays, payroll errors, or temporary crises. Once arrears are logged, landlords receive prompts to act to protect income. Repayment plans that once paused action may no longer register within automated workflows. Tenants juggling benefits, unstable work, or caring duties are especially exposed, as delays beyond their control are treated as risk signals rather than solvable issues. Reducing harm requires tenants to act earlier and document everything. Setting payment reminders, keeping proof of income disruption, and communicating in writing can slow escalation. Requesting written repayment agreements helps create evidence if systems move forward regardless. Seeking advice immediately after missing a payment increases options. Automated arrears reporting prioritizes speed over context. In a system designed to minimize delay, renters must respond faster than technology. Without preparation, minor timing issues become formal disputes. This shift increases homelessness risk by shrinking the window between difficulty and enforcement, leaving little space for recovery when unexpected costs or delays hit households already stretched by rising living expenses. These systems rarely pause for negotiation, empathy, or context, making renters feel invisible while processes continue running automatically, pushing cases forward even when solutions exist but are never reviewed by humans with discretion and judgment. Number 8. Social housing eligibility tightening. Social housing eligibility tightening is expected to exclude thousands of households by 2026. Councils are raising thresholds for local connection, length of residence, and income eligibility. People who recently moved for work, fled unsafe housing, or experienced family breakdown may no longer qualify. Waiting lists are not only longer, but harder to enter. Applicants can be refused before assessment, leaving them without support. This shift disproportionately affects low-income workers, care leavers, and people escaping unstable rentals, who often rely on social housing as a last line of security. Eligibility tightening also redefines priority categories. Health conditions, overcrowding, and risk assessments face stricter evidence standards. Informal arrangements, like sofa surfing, are often dismissed as acceptable, even when unsafe. Digital allocation systems rank applicants automatically, pushing lower-scored households out of view. Once rejected, reapplications are harder because prior decisions remain on record. Many people discover exclusion only after eviction, when options are limited. Social housing shifts from a safety net into a highly restricted resource, accessed by fewer people under increasing pressure. Reducing risk requires understanding local rules before crisis hits. Checking council criteria, saving proof of residence, and documenting housing instability improves chances. Applying early, even while housed, can preserve eligibility. Seeking advice from housing charities helps avoid technical refusals. Social housing eligibility tightening rarely feels sudden to policymakers, but for households, it arrives abruptly. When private rents rise and alternatives disappear, exclusion from social housing leaves nowhere to turn. These rules do not cause homelessness alone, but they remove the final buffer many families depend on when everything else fails, especially during economic shocks, relationship breakdowns, illness, job loss, or benefit delays that hit without warning suddenly nationwide. Number 9. Shared housing regulation crackdowns. Shared housing regulation crackdowns are reshaping the private rental market and reducing available rooms across the UK. New standards targeting safety, space, and licensing for shared homes are leading to inspections and closures. Landlords, unable or unwilling to upgrade properties, are exiting the market quickly. As houses are withdrawn, tenants are given short notice to leave, often with no alternative options. Students, migrants, low-income workers, and single adults rely heavily on shared housing, making these closures a direct pathway toward homelessness. Crackdowns focus heavily on houses in multiple occupation, where rules on occupancy limits, fire safety, and room size are enforced more aggressively. Councils use data-led targeting to identify non-compliant properties, sometimes based on complaints or outdated records. When a property fails inspection, tenants may be displaced immediately, even if they followed every rule. Enforcement prioritizes compliance, not rehousing, leaving renters responsible for finding solutions in a market with fewer affordable options. Reducing risk means understanding local licensing rules and acting early when inspections occur. Tenants should ask landlords about compliance, save written notices, and seek advice before deadlines pass. Community organizations and councils may offer limited relocation help, but access depends on timing. Shared housing crackdowns remove low-cost housing faster than replacements appear. Without preparation, renters move from informal stability into crisis. Awareness, documentation, and early action provide the only buffer in a tightening system where regulation improves safety but unintentionally accelerates displacement for those with the fewest choices. This impact spreads through neighborhoods, affecting employment access, education continuity, and mental well-being, as frequent forced moves destabilize routines and push vulnerable renters closer to street homelessness during periods of housing shortage and rising costs nationwide. Number 10. Rising enforcement during political cycles. Rising enforcement during political cycles has a direct impact on housing stability across the UK. In the lead-up to elections or major policy announcements, governments often prioritize visible enforcement to demonstrate control. Housing becomes an easy pressure point. Inspections increase. Compliance checks accelerate, and penalties are applied more aggressively. Landlords respond by removing perceived risks, issuing notices, or avoiding tenants seen as complicated. These shifts happen quickly, creating instability for renters who have done nothing wrong. Political cycles also influence how strictly existing rules are applied. Laws do not need to change for enforcement to intensify. Councils, regulators, and agencies receive informal signals to act faster and show results. This leads to sudden inspections, license reviews, and compliance drives targeting rentals, shared housing, and benefit-linked tenancies. Tenants may face disruption without warning as processes move from tolerance to zero-margin enforcement. Appeals and discretion become less common during these periods. Reducing risk requires anticipating enforcement surges rather than reacting to them. Keeping documentation current, resolving minor issues early, and avoiding delays in communication helps. Tenants should be cautious during renewal periods and policy transitions. Monitoring announcements and local council activity provides early signals. Rising enforcement does not target individuals personally, but its effects are widespread. When housing becomes part of political messaging, renters experience the fallout first. Stability depends on readiness, awareness, and timing. Those unprepared face sudden notices, inspections, or non-renewals that push households into crisis during moments. When support systems are overwhelmed and alternatives are scarce across regions nationwide, leaving little room for recovery or negotiation, once enforcement momentum builds and public pressure drives rapid visible action. Housing insecurity in the UK is no longer driven by a single cause. It is the result of multiple systems tightening at the same time. The rules discussed show how housing, benefits, immigration, and enforcement are increasingly connected. Small issues that once felt manageable can now escalate quickly into eviction or exclusion. What makes this especially dangerous is how quietly these changes operate. Many people only realize they are at risk when notices arrive, checks fail, or options disappear. The common thread across all these rules is speed. Faster checks, faster decisions, and faster enforcement leave less room to recover from mistakes or delays. Stability now depends on preparation, documentation, and awareness rather than assumptions about fairness or past security. Renters who understand how these systems interact are better positioned to protect themselves. Those who do not are often caught off guard. If this breakdown helped you see the risks more clearly, support the channel by liking the video and subscribing for more clear, practical explanations. Share your thoughts or experiences in the comments so others can learn from them. Watch the related videos on housing, benefits, and legal changes to stay ahead of what is coming. Staying informed is one of the strongest tools you have in an uncertain housing landscape.